We weren't sure what to expect from Hyeseong Kim, but his first start looked pretty good. And that's a good thing because the Dodgers may have lost an outfielder. Let's talk about it. Let's get locked on Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yo, Dodger fans. Welcome to Locked On Dodgers. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 local sports daily podcast network. Locked On, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. This is the daily podcast covering the World Series champion Los Angeles Dodgers, bringing you the smart fans' perspective on our boys in blue. You can find us wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. You can become an everydayer by listening and watching every day. You can make that easier on yourself by subscribing to get notified when our episodes are ready or when we're going live. And if it's your first time listening, watching, welcome. I'm Ben Samperio. That's Jeff Snider. And we've been doing this podcast here since 2019. We've each covered the team for over a decade in our own way. And we've been Dodger fans our whole life. So we've seen a lot of Dodgers. And today we're going to talk about, you guessed it, the Dodgers. It was a big win for the Dodgers. I guess closer than we thought maybe. But either way, Hyeseong Kim's first career start looked pretty good. The Dodgers may have lost Teoscar Hernandez. We'll talk about that in the second segment. And they still have a spot open in the rotation unless they're going to fill it with Ben Casparius. We're going to talk about that in the third segment. But let's start off with Hyeseong Kim in his first career start. We saw him play an inning of defense in 2 games ago. And then we saw him on the base pass in yesterday's game. And we got to see the full arsenal in this game and a couple hits, stolen base, a lot of smiles.
Yeah, absolutely. Dave Roberts, after the game, was talking about Kim and how much his teammates love him and talking about his confidence level. And just he didn't look overwhelmed or overmatched. And I'm a big believer in pump the brakes. I know one game is way too early, even if you count yesterday and his pinch running, it's way too early to make any big proclamations. But also, I'm a big believer in if dude has a great game, especially in his first career start, you talk about it. And this was an excellent game. He got his first hit, first 2 hits, his first run scored, first RBI, scoring your first run on the hardest hit home run of the season in Major League Baseball, hit by Shohei Ohtani. 3-degree launch angle, 847 mile an hour exit velocity, just destroyed that ball. So that's got to be fun for Kim. And played good defense, showed off the nifty glove on a play that they didn't end up getting an out on there in the 8th inning, but cool play anyway. Just when you look at what he brings to the table and the fact that they don't need him to be a superstar, just come in and give quality at bats and play quality defense and run the base as well. He also got a second career stolen base. Like he's a ball player. And it wouldn't surprise me at all, even though I've seen, like I said, talking about pumping the brakes. I see people saying, well, let's not go overboard on this. He still has development to do. And I agree with that, but I'm not totally convinced that development can't happen at the big league level because, as I've said many times, there are some things that you can only learn about playing in the big leagues by playing in the big leagues. And like we thought Kim might make the big leagues out of spring training. That was the plan, or at least the hope going into spring training, was he would make the big league roster. And so the fact that he didn't was the anomaly. And so if he's ready to play in the big leagues and bat 9th and be that guy who gets on base at a reasonable clip right in front of Shohei Ohtani, puts pressure on the pitcher, splitting the pitcher's attention with Shohei Ohtani at the plate seems like a good formula to me.
Yeah, this basically just showed us, I don't know about the ceiling of Kim, but basically what they would want out of him, a guy that can make contact, the guy that can get on base ahead of Ohtani, a guy that can, cause havoc on the base pass, and, a guy that can play defense. And whether it's at second base, whether it's at shortstop, whether it's in the outfield, he's played all over in the minors, and that's kind of the expectation of what it'll be here. Essentially a left-handed version of what Kike and Taylor have been for the Dodgers for the last few years, on and off for Kike. But it's one of those things where, is he going to face a better pitcher and probably, not get a hit? Probably. Is he going to go into a slump at some point? Yeah, probably. But so does everybody else. It's just a matter of what he does when he's not in a slump. And that's kind of what, and how often he can avoid going into slumps. And that's all realistically what you need to be a good major league player offensively. Defensively, a guy that can play multiple spots and be very fast serves value, and Chris Taylor's doing that in a sense. He's not extremely fast, but he's faster than everybody else that they have pretty much, and he plays multiple spots on defense. And, he gets an occasional hit. He hit an RBI double in this game. So if that's what Kim can be and he can grow into more, it's exciting. And, as we're going to talk about in a little bit, we might get to see more.
Yeah, absolutely. And, when you talk about fit on this team, on this roster, the needs they have, a guy who can put the bat on the ball, who can run the bases, who can play good defense at multiple positions. It's hard not to like having a guy there.
And bring good vibes.
Yeah, and bring good vibes for sure. His teammates love him. And, the question is, can you find enough playing time for him that it won't hinder his development? And at this point, between the positions he can play and everything else, I think that answer is probably yes. And even, obviously we have still another 5 days until Tommy Edman comes off the IL, 4 days, I guess. Before he's even eligible to come off. We'll see if he comes off immediately. Hopefully he will. But like we talked about last night, even with Edman out, you can probably find enough plate appearances for him in one of those roster spots that is currently providing very little.
Yeah, and with Kim, I feel, I'm not sure how the Dodgers feel, but at least I would feel like it's a little bit different. When you draft someone or you sign someone internationally when they're 16, you probably are very involved and very careful with the development because, you want them to become an everyday major league type guy. With Kim, realistically, the money's already invested. They've already signed him to a contract. He's going to get what he's going to get. And if you need a guy that just, maybe starts once a week, twice a week, but brings you all these other things that we talked about, he can be that. I don't think the Dodgers are going to feel handicapped by saying, we want this guy to develop, and unless they promised him that when they signed him and they said, hey, we're going to, develop you and want you to be more of an everyday player, not necessarily a bench guy. I don't know what they did when they signed him, but if they didn't tell him that directly, I feel like they're not as inclined to worry about development if he's a fit right now.
Especially, yeah, for sure. Especially because he can do so many of those late game things. So even when he's not starting, he is a huge weapon off the bench, pinch running for, you name it, Will Smith, Max Muncy, Michael Conforto. He pinch ran for Andy Pajes the other day because he's one of the few people on the team faster than Andy Pajes. You can pinch run him for anybody, and it's a speed upgrade. And the defense, you can pinch, put him in late inning defense, even if it's just, center field, because it's late in the game. We're going to get Teoscar out of there or Conforto out of there, slide Pajes over, put Kim in center field. So many ways that you can get him in the game, even when he doesn't start, that even if he's only getting 2 or 3 starts a week, I think there's a lot of value he can bring to this team.
Yeah, and some of that value may go beyond Tommy Edman's IL stint because Teoscar Hernandez came out of the game early. It appears he tweaked his hamstring. Dave Roberts said it was a little concerning. So when Dave Roberts is saying that, it's probably a little bit more than a little concerning. What's going to happen if Teoscar goes down? We'll talk about it. Make sure to keep it locked on Dodgers. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. I'm sure there's come a point where you've checked your bank account and you wonder, man, where did all my money go? Where's all this cash that I make or money that I make? Where's it going? Well, between dining out, online shopping, Dodger tickets, entertainment, whatever it is that you like to do, it's easy to lose track. And that's where Monarch Money comes in because they're your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center, and you can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. If you start using Monarch Money, you'll realize how much you spend on certain things, and then you can budget smarter and save more. And instead of juggling all the multiple apps that there is out there, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONMLB for half off your first year. Well, thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen today, your last listen today, whatever listen of the day. We appreciate those of you that do listen. We appreciate you if you're an everydayer. That's someone that listens or watches every day. And you can make that easier on yourself by subscribing and get notified when episodes are ready or when we're going live on YouTube. There's also part of our channel is the Locked On Dodgers Postcast with host Pete Fox. He's available live after most Dodger games, talking Dodgers as well as we are. So, Jeff, Teoscar Hernandez came out of the game early. We heard during the game that it was hamstring tightness. Roberts talked about it a little bit more after the game, mentioned the hamstring, mentioned the adductor, and said it was a little bit concerning. They are going to be bringing someone in at the very least for the taxi squad. But I would imagine with the hamstring and Teoscar, and then not saying it was mostly precautionary, I got to imagine this is an easy IL stint. You're on mute.
Sorry, like you hinted at before the break, when even Dave Roberts says he's concerned, that is Dave Roberts-ish for, he's going on the IL. It's hard to picture him avoiding an IL stint because even if it is precautionary, you're not going to know enough tomorrow. Even if he wakes up feeling great tomorrow, you're not going to risk it. You're not going to risk a major. You're going to think, oh, good. Then a 10-day IL stint should be all we need. Like that. That's your question right now is tomorrow morning, the MRI will tell us, is it a 10-day IL stint or is he out for a month? That's what we're going to be finding out. And so they said they're calling somebody up and Robert said either to join the roster or to taxi, depending on how the tests go. That's the big question, who it's going to be, because right now the Dodgers have two outfielders on their 40-man roster who aren't in the big leagues, and that's James Outman and Esteury Ruiz. I think you can make a case for either of those guys. I think I'd lean towards Outman, but there's cases to be made.
Yeah, Outman's the, I guess, known quantity here because we've seen him in the majors before. We've seen him have success. We've seen him have the opposite of success. But at the very least, bare minimum, we know he's a solid defensive outfielder and he brings you a little bit of speed. Now with Ruiz, a little bit more of an unknown. He's had some success, maybe not. I don't know if he ever hit Outman's peak in terms of offense, but he is faster than Outman. He does steal bases, but he's not necessarily known for his defensive prowess out there, whether it's in center or in the corner outfield.
And I'm not necessarily known for my healthy eating. That's the nice way of saying Esteury Ruiz is not a good defensive outfielder, definitely not a center fielder.
Yeah, so I guess for the Dodgers, it might be as simple as, okay, do we want someone that can just fill in and play, or do we want to see what we have in Ruiz? Now, what we haven't heard yet is if they're working on anything offensively with Ruiz. I'm sure they are, but, is it a matter of they want him to get, some more plate appearances? Do they want him to kind of whatever? Because when you look at their stats, Ruiz has played in about half as many plate appearances as Outman, but he's out OPSing Outman. He's got the same amount of doubles. He's got more walk or one less walk. He's got way less strikeouts. He's got a lot more stolen bases. I don't know. I don't want to say Outman sucks and, I don't want to see James Outman up, but I kind of want to see what Ruiz has.
Yeah, I can see that. And Outman, to be fair to him, his overall season numbers are weighed down by starting off really, really poorly. And so, he's been a lot better lately. That's definitely something. And the reason I keep focused on center field is because, if you're calling somebody up, you might as well slide Andy Paez over to right field where he's better. He's been solid in center field this year. He's better than solid in right field. And so, call up somebody to play center field, especially since you don't have Tommy Edman right now. And so you don't quite have that same amount of, like, Hyeseong Kim has played some center field in the minor leagues. He could be your center fielder. I guess the thing that Ruiz and Outman have in common is they've both shown in previous years that they can hit AAA pitching. The question is, can they hit major league pitching? And so far for both of them, for Ruiz, for sure, the answer has been no. For Outman, the answer has been every once in a while, but mostly no. And so it might come down to, okay, which guy who's having a solid season right now in AAA do we think has a better chance of it being real? Or do we go off the 40-man roster and say, oh, it's time to get Dalton Rushing up here?
Yeah, I guess the severity of Teo will help answer that question. I don't know if they're willing to just throw him out into a corner outfield spot right now and kind of get him going that way in the major leagues, but I guess they could. The other part of it is also just what their thought is. I think Ruiz is a guy that you kind of want to see. Well, I guess you don't want to see him play every day, but you want to see something out of one of these guys. And if their decision is, okay, if Teoscar's out for a month, we want Edmund to play center when he comes back. We'll have Hyeseong Kim play some second base, and then we'll mix in some other guys. Then I guess it ultimately won't matter too much. But if you want an outfielder specifically, then yeah, you go with Outman. You take all the strikeouts, you take the occasional one that he runs into, and you hope that, he can find some of that magic he had 2 years ago.
Yeah. And, back on the Dalton Rushing topic, I love the idea of it being Dalton Rushing if they could find playing time for him. But he's not on the 40-man roster right now. And that is something that has to be considered because they would have to make a roster move. And that would mean, either pulling the trigger on DFAing somebody, maybe Yoendrys Gomez, you don't normally DFA a pitcher to add a position player, but right now with all the
knowing you have Kershaw's roster move also coming.
Yeah, the multiple guys coming off the 60-day IL pitchers, they're going to need those spots. And so it's hard to see them using a 40-man roster spot on Rushing right now before they need him. It seems like it's going to have to be when Barnes either gets hurt or they say, okay, well, thanks for the memory, Sam. See you later. That's, that at that point, maybe they pull the trigger on Rushing. Hard to see Rushing being the guy right now as much as we would all like to see that.
Yeah. Unless Teo gets a worse prognosis than we're hoping. And if he's looking at 6 to 8 weeks or something like that, then I think that's the one time you would, or not the one time, but that's the time you would, hey, we know what, we're going to have to make sacrifice on this 40-man roster because we feel comfortable giving this guy 2 months worth of plate appearances and seeing what we got.
Yeah, could be.
Yeah. Yoendrys Gomez, he pitched in this game. You probably don't want to remember him pitching in this game. You probably don't want to remember him pitching a lot in general. He started off well in his Dodger career, but he has not been able to get the Marlins out very well.
Yeah, so far in 4 games against the Marlins, the Dodgers have allowed 18 runs. 7 of those have been allowed by Yoendrys Gomez. You've got his ERA against the Marlins this year is 47.25. The rest of the Dodgers 2.70. It's remarkable in that it is able to be remarked upon. He's on the team because they need a warm body. I don't know if they are still at the point where they need a warm body so badly that it needs to be Yoendrys Gomez's warm body. And we may see sayonara.
Or Davis can come back soon, right?
I can't remember exactly when. I mean, Noah Davis isn't the answer to any question I want to say out loud, though. I'm just
saying 40 guys on the 40.
And that's why Gomez is here, because when you're playing the Marlins, you are planning on having a big lead. Both games that he's pitched, the Dodgers won the games, even though he came in with a gas can and a lighter and did his best to blow it up. The Dodgers won both games because they had relatively insurmountable leads, or at least not so surmountable that Yoendrys Gomez could blow them. And, that's why he's on the roster. You hope to have those kind of leads that even Yoendrys Gomez can't blow. And maybe that does keep him around for a few more days. I guess he only threw a third of an inning tonight, although he probably threw 30 pitches. I haven't looked at the exact number, so he's probably not available tomorrow anyway. So maybe they, I don't know. He's a guy who it's going to be, if we, on our old podcast, we used to do the obscure former Dodger segment where we talk about guys. I never even heard of that guy. And he played for my favorite team. And I think by later this year, we might have forgotten the name Yoendrys Gomez. And we'll say, remember Yoendrys Gomez? And we'll be like, wait, who? And I'm looking forward to that day.
Yeah, obscure former Dodgers. It was a fun segment. The last 5 years or so, it's more of a. There's a lot more to pick from the last 5 years or so with this Dodger team. But
Yeah. Do you remember who our first ever obscure former Dodger was on the old podcast?
I do not.
Jack Fimple. Look him up.
That was yours.
He had a sweet mustache.
Yeah, that was definitely one of your guys.
Yeah.
We may talk about Matt Sauer. We may talk about Noah Davis. We may talk about some other people because the Dodgers have an empty spot in their rotation right now. Jack Dreyer and Ben Casparius have filled that role. Should they continue filling that role? We're going to talk about it. So make sure to keep it locked on Dodgers. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. There's nothing better than catching a live MLB game, whether it's the crack of the bat, the roar of the crowd, the smell of the ballpark food, whatever it is. Game Time makes getting tickets easier than ever, especially if you're looking to go last minute, because they have last minute deals, all-in pricing, and the lowest price guarantee. They take all the stress out of buying MLB tickets, and tickets usually drop as Game Time gets closer, meaning you can score an incredible deal. Game Time is the official ticketing partner of Locked On, and with the Dodgers still on the road for a little bit, but coming home with some big promotions in the next few weeks, you want to check out Game Time to get you those tickets to those games. Or if you're in Miami or Arizona, you can check them out right now. They have ways of making fine deals effortless, and one of those ways is Game Time Picks. It filters out all the fluff and highlights the top discounts in the stadium. If you're going to a stadium you've never been to or sitting in an area you've never been to, you can preview your exact seat before purchasing, so there's no surprises when you get there. And as I mentioned, they got the lowest price guarantee, so you can always feel comfortable getting tickets. Because if you find something, they'll refund you 110% of the difference. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. I want to thank you for being in every day. If you are one in every day, or just someone that listens or watches every day, we recognize a lot of you here live with us on YouTube. There are plenty more of you out there listening to the podcast or watching on YouTube at a later time. We appreciate you as well. And every day is very easy to do. You listen and watch every day. The Dodgers are on almost every day, especially 19 of the next 20 days. The Dodgers are playing. We're going to be talking about it pretty much all those days. So why not become an every dayer now? And get ready for the rest of the season. Remember, you can go beyond the podcast, come Locked On Dodgers Insider by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. Get text directly from us, keeping you up to date with the Dodgers, and get a link, an exclusive invite to our Discord server where you can talk Dodgers with other Dodger fans for the rest of the season, or as long as you're an insider. So, all right, Jeff. The Dodgers currently have Yoshinobu Yamamoto, Roki Sasaki, Dustin May, Tony Gonsolin as 4 starters. They do not currently have a 5th starter. They're probably going to need a 6th starter here in the next couple weeks. But for the 5th starter role, they talked about Ben Casparius stretching out a little bit. He's stretched out around 60, 70 pitches now. Every outing, he goes around 60 or, to the full max of his efforts. He gets a little bit more stretched out. Do we like the combo of Jack Dreyer, Casparius as a combo for some of these starts? Do we expect Casparius to just become a full-fledged starter? Kershaw is due back in a couple weeks, but they probably will still need another starter.
Yeah, my guess is that this was more of a today thing because Casparius isn't fully stretched out, so they knew, we're probably only getting about 4 innings from him anyway, and so might as well go with an opener, and do it that way. Maybe when he is fully stretched out and they're actually hopeful of getting 6 innings, maybe they don't go that route. But the opener thing, a lot of times that's opponent dependent too. Who are they going up against? The lefty righty matchup, all that stuff. They used to use the opener a lot against the Rockies because Charlie Blackmon was going to be batting in the first inning, and Ryan McMahon, and so they'd go with the lefty opener sometimes. I think it's probably more about that when the opener makes sense than specifically doing not quite a piggyback. A piggyback, you think more of 2 guys pitching about the same amount. Dreyer was going, about an inning in this. He was gonna, even after the short first inning, very few pitches. His job was to get through the lefty batting 4th, and so whether that was 3 outs or 4 outs, that was Jack Dreyer's job. and that's what he did. And so I think a lot of it will just depend when they look at matchups. If they're playing a team that has a couple lefties at the top of the lineup, maybe they go Dreyer as an opener again. But in general, I think we're probably looking at Casparius as a starter at this point, or at least starter adjacent. You're muted.
Being built up now to where he's at, I mean, there's no reason for him not to be the full-fledged starter, especially considering what we've seen. We talked about Landon Knack, we talked about Justin Robles, we talked about Bobby Miller in the past when we talked about filling this rotation spot. And Casparius has been the best of all of them in multiple ways. But now that he's being stretched out as a starter, like even I think that they talked about a little bit on the broadcast, if I'm not mistaken, how he didn't necessarily have his best stuff, but he was still able to go, or somebody said that or something of Dodgers while the game was going on. And yeah, that's a sign of something good. Obviously, the Marlins being the Marlins helps that, but I think Casparius has shown enough to earn the Dodgers' trust to be a starter and kind of move that realm. Now, with that happening, then you kind of need the next role to kind of step up and somebody kind of become more of a multi-inning guy. Jack Dreyer's been that guy in the past, but he's not necessarily fully built up to go 2 innings every time. He's kind of a guy that has done that when it's been allowed or when his pitch count's low enough. So do you feel like there's somebody else out there that can kind of fill that role? Does Luis Garcia become that guy now? He's been better of late since after starting the season, not great.
I just remembered that the Dodgers just got those 2 relief pitchers. They have 2 more guys on the 40-man roster, JP Fireeisen and Ryan Ludus. Funny, I can remember his tricky last name and not his first name, which is the name of one of my sons. That seems to be how it goes. Yeah, they have both of those guys. And so maybe we are saying goodbye to Yoendrys Gomez tomorrow. Fingers crossed. And Fireeisen has which one of them was it? One of them, I think it was Fireeisen, who had thrown. Yeah, he's done 2 of his last 3 appearances in AAA with the D-backs before they let him go were multiple inning stints, 32 and 38 pitches. And so he could be a 2-inning guy for sure. And, there's possibilities there of guys. I'm so torn on the Casparius thing because I really like Ben Casparius as a reliever. I like the mindset. I like the fire. I like the stuff, everything. But obviously, starting pitchers are more valuable than relief pitchers. And Casparius has been, if he can bring that value as a starter, I think it's definitely worth at least trying to see if he can do that. But, when you look at who's going to fill his reliever role, yeah, it's Jack Dreyer might have to step up a little bit. Luis Garcia has definitely pitched better lately than he did early in the season, and has that ability to go multiple innings if necessary. It might just be one of those things where they need the offense to give them situations where it's more comfortable to go with a guy like Luis Garcia for multiple innings.
Yeah. Luis Garcia pitched was it the 7th inning of a 1-run game yesterday? More out of maybe necessity than anything else, but they were comfortable enough to do it. So yeah. We'll see what happens there. Let's talk about Michael Conforto before we get out of here. He finally got a base hit. He was in 0 for 31 stretch before he got the hit, and I don't know. Obviously, Michael Conforto is not a very high on anyone's list right now. He's probably not very high on our list, but there may be some signs, right, Jeff?
Yeah, and I was, I've kind of been trying to distill my thoughts on Conforto, and what I boiled it down to in the last couple of days is I think his issue is a launch angle issue because he's hitting the ball decently hard. His hard hit rate is roughly in line with his career marks. Not great, but I think the big thing is if he could turn half of those ground balls into line drives, things would look totally different. And his first at bat today, even though it was technically a ground out to second base, it was at a 5-degree launch angle, so almost a line drive. Instead, it was a one hopper to the second baseman, but it was hit 103 miles an hour, and it had a 600 expected batting average, meaning 60% of the time a ball hit like that is a hit. And then his third time up when he finally got the hit, that one, again, hit hard, line drive, 11-degree launch angle, and an 870 expected batting average. And then his last time up, another line drive, a little bit under it, 19-degree launch angle, hit relatively hard, 390 expected batting average. But the fact that he had 2 balls today in play with an expected batting average of 600 or better, guess how many of those he hit in the last 12 days combined, Vince? Guess one.
One.
Correct. Good guess, Vince. He hit 1 ball that well in the last 12 days, and he hit 2 today. And so, and you could see on his face, even after his line out in the 8th inning, in the dugout, did you see him? He's smiling. He's getting high fives from his teammates because everybody in the dugout looked at that and said, this is a different Michael C. He might actually hit the ball. And so it's just one game. It's just one hit. But, it might be the start of Conforto remembering how to hit line drives, because I'm positive that's what they've been working with them on is, look, just stop hitting the ball on the ground, get the ball in the air. And I think some of that probably got in his head where he's being too passive. I need to get a pitch I can elevate. And so he's looking at strikes and then getting into bad counts and looking at strike 3 and all those things. Slumps can mess with your head, but I think the underlying issue is lift the ball just a little bit and you're going to be doing just fine.
Yeah, I think we've seen it messing with him in the form of just, kind of swinging less, a lot of looking at strikes, maybe not knowing exactly where he's at. We've talked about him a lot. I don't think the Dodgers are doing anything with him before June, especially now considering Teoscar might be out. He just kind of has to step it up. The Dodgers obviously continue to have faith in him because, even though they moved him down to the bottom of the lineup a couple games ago, he's not always going to be batting 9th, and that's probably more of a Hyeseong Kim thing than a Conforto thing. But it's just one of those things. At this point, he's going to be in there. So for us to say, "Oh, he sucks," we know when I'm DFA and whatever, he's going to be in the lineup. And if he can start hitting better, that's going to benefit the Dodgers. Yeah,
the best version of this Dodgers team is Conforto hitting well. Yeah. And the question is, does that version exist? I haven't given up on that. The Dodgers. I saw somebody today say that the only reason the Dodgers haven't cut Conforto yet is because they gave him $17 million. And I told him, you're almost there, because I think the Dodgers gave him $17 million because he has a history of being a good hitter. And the reason they haven't cut him yet is because he has a history of being a good hitter. And so, yes, he's been terrible for a month, but a month isn't enough to say he has forgotten how to hit. Sometimes in hindsight, if he continues to be bad for 3 more months, then we'll look back and say, yep, we should have known back in early May. But the reality is we can't know right now if this is a slump or if he has forgotten how to hit. And today is at least a sign that it was just a slump.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens. The good thing right now, the Dodgers have the Marlins for 2 more games before they head to Arizona to face the Diamondbacks. So we're going to be here the rest of the week talking those games. Jeff, you got anything else before we get done?
I guess we should mention Ohtani and Freeman both homered. Ohtani's was a laser. It was a shot. It was awesome. Freeman's was a blast to center. I like when those guys homer, and Dave Roberts did say that Mookie Betts has the day off tomorrow. Of course, that was before the game, before the Teoscar injury. We'll see if that changes, but with the stretch of no days off, he's going to try to get days off for some of these guys. And so probably we have Mookie the day off tomorrow, whether that's Kim at shortstop or Kim at second and, Kike at short or Rojas or whatever. But yeah, probably Mookie has a day off tomorrow.
Yeah, we went through this whole episode without mentioning Ohtani homered, Mookie had 2 hits, and Freddie had a home run. So that's sometimes a bad thing, sometimes a good thing. In this case, a little bit of both with the Teoscar injury. But that's going to do it for today's episode. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day. Make sure to find us wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. All you got to do is search for Locked On Dodgers. You can become an everydayer by listening and watching every day. And you can make that easier by subscribing and get notified when episodes are ready. You can also check out Locked On MLB Game Night, part of Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you get podcasts, get local analysis for all the other games going on besides just the Dodgers. You can always go beyond the podcast, become a Locked On Dodgers Insider by going to joinsubtext.com/Locked On Dodgers. get text directly from us, and join our Discord server. You can find us on social media, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Locked On Dodgers. Jeff's on Twitter at Snydog. I'm at Vincent91. You can DM us any questions or comments. You can also send those via email, lockedondodgers@gmail.com, or via voicemail text at 323-863-5625. We're here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be here with us when you get in your car. If you're at home, take your smart device, play podcast, Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. Have a good one.
We'll talk to you tomorrow.